Hi, this is James Gorman of Total Library here with a top list video. Last year I wanted to do one before the December ended, but I never got around to doing one. So I've been wanting to do a new top list video because I haven't done one in a while, and I've been trying to think of what to do. Then my friend David gave me an idea. He recently posted two videos on the best and worst books he read of last year, and thanks again, David, for your videos as they inspired me to do this new video. So I'm going to do the top 10 best and worst novels I read of last year. So last year in 2022, I read a total of 23 novels, which is really good. So this year I'm going to try to see if I can surpass 23 novels. And I have gone through my videos and picked like the 10 best and worst novels I read, and this is not basically these books are not in particular order. There's not like one has advantage over the other one. It's just these are the books that I did not enjoy or did enjoy of last year. So without further ado, let's begin with it. So we're going to start with the 10 worst novels, and for number one is Dune Messiah by Frank Herbert. This is the sequel to Frank Herbert's hit novel Dune, first published in 1965. Dune Messiah came out in '69. And this was it was not a really good sequel at all. It was very boring, depressing at times. There's a lot of drama, characters arguing, yelling at each other, a lot of backstabbing, double crossing, and the more I think about it now, it kind of feels like a soap opera kind of set in space. That's what it feels like. And but oh yeah, and the other thing I did not like in the book was Paul was comparing himself to Adolf Hitler. I was like, why would you compare yourself to a dictator? Like it just felt so out of place to have that brought up in the book, and I really didn't like that because I thought Paul was supposed to be, the hero in the first book. Now he's kind of like an anti-hero, or more like becoming a villain. But despite all the bad stuff in the book, the one thing I absolutely hated about this book, which I didn't mention during my review in Dune Messiah, and I wish I did, was the names are the fucking worst. Like, when I had to do that Dune Messiah review, the absolute worst thing was the names. The names are so hard to pronounce. Like, when I was doing my review and I get to one word, I was like, how do you pronounce this word? I would have to look it up how to say it, and then after that, then another name would come up and I have to look that name up and figure out how to say it. Then when I get back to the other person's name, I completely forgot how to say that name. And oh my goodness, that drove me up the wall, just trying to pronounce these names, remember how to pronounce them correctly, and repeating the process over and over again until I finally got through recording that video, and I shit you not, it was like 32 or 33 minutes long. Oh, and to edit that video was the absolute most stressful thing I have ever done. It was not fun having to go through that video and edit until I said the name right and then move on and again repeat the process over again. So that was like the worst video I've ever done. It was just so stressful. I did not enjoy it. So I'm hoping when I go to read Children of Dune and the other books, the names will be a lot easier to pronounce. Like, oh my goodness, like, if you're going to write a book in the future, please don't try to come up with complicated names to pronounce. It makes it so difficult when you go to review the book, and then when you're trying to tell someone else about the characters in the book, then you have to figure out how to pronounce their names. It's not fun. That's one of the worst books I read of last year. All right. Okay, next book. University by Ben Little, also known as The Night School. This was the very first, well, actually, first book I read by Ben Little was The Store, but I didn't get far in it. This was actually the first book that I've completed by Ben Little, and it was the fucking worst book I've read. It was just so bad. First off, it wasn't scary at all. It had a lot of moments that made me cringe and just made me want to turn the page to get the scene over with, and then later on either be cringing or grossed out by something really fucked up in the book, and then having to just read more just to get that scene over with. Oh, it was just a terrible book. It's not scary. It's not a horror book at all, and and I felt like it was basically, it was like Billy Idol was kind of like copying The Shining, where basically it's this haunted hotel that's driving the one character, Jack Torrance, insane, and the other characters are seeing ghosts from the past, which that makes sense, even though I don't like The Shining, but at least that makes sense. In University, there's no ghost. There's nothing. There's no explanation given to why this university is causing people to like be evil. It's never explained throughout the book. Until it reveals it's the library, the source of the evil, which is complete bullshit if you ask me. And how the main character knows that, what's going on and it's wrong and something should be done, but he doesn't do anything about it until towards the end of the book. And it was just a really stupid idea, I thought. A university that's haunted, but there's no ghost or anything like that, or something supernatural in it. It's this building, it's alive, it's evil, and it's driving these people to do nasty things. It was stupid. And the other thing I absolutely hated was in the book when characters are being killed by like the people gone insane stuff. It's not like like a slasher film like Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or even Nightmare on Elm Street, or any of those slasher films where you enjoy watching these kills because they're fun. University was the polar opposite. Watching someone die was absolutely terrible. It would either make you cringe, it would make you squeamish, or you felt so disgusted and angry that you didn't want to read any more of it. That's what I got from University. It was just not a fun book. It wasn't scary. It was just a piece of shit is what it was. And I hope that the next books I read by Bennett Lee will be a lot better than that one. I was recently talking to someone that recently got the book under its original title, The Night School, and I was saying how bad it was, and they were saying, why is it bad? So I just saved them the trouble by just simply watching my review of it than me trying to type it out and explain it, because it's not a good book at all. And they faked me, of course, for letting them know. And I also got faked for letting a person know about another book that's also terrible, Virtual Light, but that was a book I read 2 years ago, so that unfortunately was not, it's not on the list. I want it to be on the list so I can just tear that piece of shit apart again, but that's 2 years ago, so but anyway, the person was faithful of my review for Virtual Light, as they basically said it was a bullet well dodged, so they won't bother reading that book. But but I really hope when I go to read another Ben Little book, it will be good, because this is another author I hear people talk highly about, and yeah. So the first impression of University did not leave a good taste in my mouth at all. Just a terrible book. Alright. Oh yeah, and it had a really shitty ending too, where basically the main character ends up becoming infected with the evil. Again, never explained. But anyway. Alright. Next book, The Stake by Richard Lehman. This is the first book by Richard Lehman that I fully completed reading, because the other times I tried Richard Lehman books, I gave up on them. So, yeah, last year I was able to read two full Richard Lehman books in the past. I just gave up on the books, so I'm hoping when I read some future Raymond books, I'll be able to get through them, if I enjoy them. But anyway, The Stake was basically, it's the idea, basically this writer who's heavily based off of Richard Lehman himself, and I guess the friends and people are based off of actual people. I don't know, but I know that the author is based loosely off Richard Lehman. This guy is suffering from writer's block, and his friends take him on the desert to this like ghost town to kind of give him hope to spark his idea for some new ideas for a book, which he does get one. But then they find this mummified woman with a stake in her chest, and the friend thinks it's a vampire, so he convinces his friend to bring it with him, and then write this non-fiction book of fighting an actual vampire, and then they're gonna film pulling the stake out and stuff. This seems like a good idea, but it's not. The entire book goes back and forth between wanting to pull the stake out and not wanting to pull the stake out. It goes back and forth with this idea, or no, it goes back and forth with this, and it gets annoying. Like, you as a reader are just like yelling at the characters, "Pull the damn stake already! Let's see what happens! Stop teasing us!" It's so annoying, because the whole entire book goes through this process of back and forth of the main character wanting to pull the stake out and not wanting to pull the stake out, fearing what's going to happen to him, and then him becoming sexually attracted to the woman who he finds out is was a high school student that this a girl that went to the same high school that his daughter's going to, and the character and also the main character in the book also was kind of sexually interested in his friend's wife, and I really got just annoyed reading that, along with the many words that Richard Lehman just kept repeating in his book, like blouse, buttocks, rump, and constantly using the name Barbara in his books. It really got annoying. I thought, Richard, can you please use other pieces of clothing? Can you please describe a character's body parts with different words instead of using these kind of like these other words I don't like, and please use different names instead of Barbara all the time. It's annoying, but the steak was just literally boring, and then later on in the book, Richard Lehman decides to add this like serial killer rapist into the mix, and it didn't make the book interesting at all. And when you finally get to the end, when it answers the said burning question, spoiler alert, it turns out the woman is in fact a vampire, but he changes it where vampires aren't bothered by sunlight, and it turns into a bird at the end of the book, and I was like, this sucks. The whole time I read the steak, I thought what could have been a better idea is they find this vampire, they find this corpse, the friends find this corpse out in the desert. They do pull the steak out by accident or do something which causes the steak to be knocked out or whatever, and this awakens the vampire, and basically it now travels to the neighborhood where the author lives and starts going on a killing spree, and the author and the other characters have to now kill this vampire if they, because they're the only ones that know what's going on, and everyone else doesn't know about it because they won't believe their story and they don't want to get in trouble with the law. That would have been a better book, but unfortunately Richard Lehman didn't write that. So I am keeping hope that I will find a novel by this author I like. I like Richard Lehman's short fiction. Like I've read The Tub and Mess Hall, which those were really good stories actually. Just I haven't found a book by Richard Lehman I like. I do have a Richard Lehman novel picked out for this year, along with the other book I got on my shelf. So hopefully I'll enjoy those, and if not, I'll give this guy a try. And if worst case scenario, if it turns out I don't like any of his books, then at least I'll try his short fiction, see if I'll enjoy that more. But anyway, that was the steak. Okay, next, Nemesis by Isaac Asimov. This was one of the worst science fiction books I've read. It was just really boring, and again, kind of like soap opera in space. It has a cool title, it has a really cool cover, but the whole story is completely boring. So you got basically, it's the premise is that Earth is overpopulated, so people have traveled to this colonized other planets, and they made a ship that is the first interstellar travel ship that can go much further and hopefully find new planets. Unfortunately, only one ship was made, and the scientists who made that ship went on said ship, so that everyone else is stuck on Earth. And the main character is this daughter who wants to visit this planet that's close by to this red dwarf star Nemesis, and it has this mysterious urge to go there, and she can tell if people are lying. She's able to manipulate people to do her bidding, nothing malicious, of course. And the story was so boring. I hated the plot, and it just this girl knows what's going on, and she seems to have a higher level intelligence than everyone else, and everyone's like dumbfounded. It's like, how is she so smart and clever than everyone else? And then it's revealed she's got this intelligent bacteria inside of her, and it's the one that's causing her to think the way she is, and it's like, what? And then the other thing I didn't like with Nemesis was when it goes to Earth, Isaac doesn't describe what Earth is like. He just basically says it's overpopulated, the crime rate is out of control, farms are now like fortified, so people can't raid livestock or food, and there's I think it also touches on too, there's not many jobs, there's a lot of homeless people around, but it sounds like a terrible place. And this father that abandoned his wife and daughter, who was against the idea of going out into space and believes staying on Earth, and then he later regrets it, as Earth is now a terrible place to live, and has to find this scientist to try to build a ship to go after the rotor, so they can so they can not only find a life to live on, but to prove that spaceship is possible, because people think it's a big hoax. This was the other thing I really hated in the book. It's like that stupid Christopher Nolan film, Interstellar, where it's far in the future. The only jobs seem to be are school teachers and farmers. Nothing else is ever shown. The whole society believes that the space travel is impossible and the moon landing was a hoax, and everyone believes that they should stay on Earth. That's the best place to be. That they should be thankful to stay there. Yet crops are dying. It's never explained. There's these dust storms, and that's what Nemesis reminded me of. It reminded me of Interstellar. Just the stupid science fiction movie that made no fucking sense, and a film that gave me a headache because I could not figure out what the fuck was going on in it. It's too complicated for its own good, and a really bad plot. Which is the same thing with Nemesis. It's the exact same thing with that. And when the characters do make, on Earth, on the Father, does make a ship, all these people are excited to go out in space. And the Father character is saying, we can prove it's space travel by just snapping pictures from outside of Earth and other planets. And the guy says, no, you have to bring back a person from the rotor to prove the space travel is possible. It was complete bullshit, and the scientist in the book who has to make the ship is also a jerk herself, and she constantly doubts anyone's excitement that we're not going to find anything interesting. There's going to be no livable planets. It's just gas giants and stars. All there is, and then later on the crew gets so scared they hold immunity they don't want to go. It was so stupid. I'm like, come on, Isaac. You make something better here. It was a real shame because I really liked the cover and the name was really cool, but the book sucked. It was absolutely terrible. Next book, Vampires by John Stakely. This was a book that was a reread for me. I tried the book. What was it, back in 2021? I think 2021 I think, and I gave up on it, and then last year I found it in Valley Village, so I thought I'll give this book another try, and I was really disappointed with it. I love the idea that basically this team that's funded by the Vatican has to hunt down vampires, and they're given kind of like full freedom of how to do their job, so it's not like they're restricted by rules and stuff. And this sounds like a really fun idea. So you're thinking it's gonna be like, over the top violent action and a lot of gore, and of course a lot of cool kills and interesting characters. Vampires was not that, unfortunately. It's the author doesn't describe any of the scenery. It's completely featureless the entire time. As I'm reading this, I'm trying to say, okay, we're out here, but he doesn't describe what it looks like. So you have to really think in your mind what the place looks like where they are, and I really don't like that. I like when authors put description in their in their story, so you get a good idea of what it's like where the characters are and when the story takes place. The characters were terrible. They were very annoying, unlikable, and they're also really like I felt they were like a bunch of oddballs. They would say like weird things at times, and then would yell and say each other's names 3 or 5 times throughout the book. Was really annoying to read. And what else? Also, the author doesn't describe the vampires. Like, that's the one thing that really bugged me. It's like, what do these vampires look like? He just says, there's the vampires, but what do they look like? He doesn't describe them other than they have fangs. That's it. It's like, what, you can't figure out what the vampires should look like? You're just going to type in, here's the vampires. Like, come on, put more detail into this. Oh yeah, and the names of the characters were another thing I absolutely hated. There were like 3 characters that had feline-related names. It's like, you can't think of any other names to call these characters. You have to use cat names, cat names to call these characters. I really disliked it, and I was really disappointed. And but by far the worst was the writing structure of the book. It was so badly written. I thought I could write better than this, and it got to the point where I couldn't stand the author's writing style anymore. And I don't know if I want to give what is it, Armor another try, because that was actually the first book I actually tried by that author, and I did not like it at all. And I'm really hesitant if I want to read that book again, but I'll say that for maybe a future video. Luckily, Vampires was made into an excellent film by John Carpenter, so check that out. Not the book Vampires. It was not good at all. All right. Okay. Next is Flesh by Rich Lehman, the second Rich Lehman book that I've read of last year. This one, now, unlike The Stake, The Flesh has a really cool idea, and the book had so much potential, but Rich Lehman dropped the ball on this one. This one's about a kind of like slug-like creature that basically it bites into a person's leg, and then it slithers inside of you, and basically it rests in the back of your neck, and basically it uses the person as a host to live in, and also to eat other flesh from humans and stuff, which is a really cool idea. Unfortunately, Rich Lehman did not take that great idea and expand on that. He basically just throws us into the story where some girl nearly gets hit by a guy driving a van at high speed, and this cop who's Jake. Jake was his name. He is not the sharpest tool in the shed. He makes so many mistakes throughout the book, and he's basically tasked with hunting down this creature. Uh, like, yeah. So yeah, he's basically tasked with hunting down this creature later on in the book, and he makes so many mistakes. The story doesn't have anything interesting to offer. It had a few good kills, but it was not really that good. Richard Levin constantly has the story going back to the restaurant. Like, I don't know how many times he kept going back to the restaurant, along with this stupid subplot about this girl who's trying to decide she wants to dump her boyfriend after feeling embarrassed having sex in the park for the first time on their first date. It's like, oh, it was not a good book at all. And I also felt there were parts missing in the book. Like, I don't know if Flesh was much longer, had more scenes in it, but there were parts I noticed were like aftermath scenes. Like the Jake basically went back to the restaurant and stomped on a bunch of eggs that he believes that this slug creature laid, and that's the only time this alien creature does that. It doesn't do that again throughout the book, and I'm like, wait, was this thing laying eggs to grow more offspring of this creature so it can affect other people? That would have been good too, but he didn't go anywhere with that. During one point in the book, the main character's daughter is like at his house after it's hinted that his daughter is being abused by her mother, and at the end of the book, she disappears and then reappears just right at the ending. And I'm like, where does she go? Like, where does she go? Like, she just disappear. You can't just have a character just up and disappear and then reappear like nothing happened. You can't do that. And there's a part at one point in the book the main character thinks that his daughter is kidnapped in the book, and he's like, he sees a girl who he thinks is his daughter, and he's not, and he's driving a car. Of course, he doesn't pull over to get a better look. He's constantly driving while looking, and he crashes the squad car when the girl finally turns around and he realizes it's not his daughter. Like, that scene was really dumb. And then how he disposes of Roland when he finds him. He doesn't check the body first to see if the slug creature's in her. He just sets it on fire, thinking it's dead, and then it's like, nope, it infected a person, which you can. Nope, the slug creature got away, and the next person infected is someone you can easily guess who it is because it's part of the subplot in the book. Oh, just I consider The Flesh to be the poor man's equivalent to the '87 science fiction horror film The Hidden, which is about a alien creature that goes inside of people's mouths and takes control of them as a host, and it basically commits crime where you got this other alien that's also uses people's bodies as a host and to go after the said alien creature with this cop in the mix. That was a lot better. If only The Flesh could have been that good too, but it wasn't. And the odd thing too is that Flesh seems to be the fan favorite of Richard Lehman books, and I was like, what do people see in this book? I really didn't like it at all. It could have been so much better. Alright. Next, The Architect of Sleep by Stephen R. Boyd. This was the last book I read of last year, and I was really hoping this would be a really good book, and it was not. It had a really cool cover, it had a really cool idea, but this is a book where it gets off to a good start, but that is not does last long. It's short-lived, as after the main character decides to go do some spelunking in Florida. Before going on a date with his girlfriend and then having to go to work, he's transported into another world, and it's got raccoon people in it. And these raccoon people cannot speak English at all. They can only communicate through grunts and sign language, which was not fun to read. having to read parts in the book where these big spaces where a word should be there, but it's not there because the character does not know the word until later on in the book, where he progresses, begins to understand more words. It was really annoying. I thought, have the characters talk English. It makes it so much easier for characters to communicate, understand each other, and get the story moving forward. If they speak in our language and the other character has to learn it, fine. I'm fine with that as long as they can understand and communicate each other and get the story going. But the whole sign language thing took so long for the character to finally learn it, and then he still doesn't fully know it halfway through the book, because he's still got other words to learn. It's not fun at all, and the entire book is just the day-to-day life of this James Bentley, the main character, and that's all. The book just follows day-to-day life with him and the female raccoon character Truck, which he decides to call and doesn't bother asking her what her name is, because I guess it's too much trouble to ask her what her name is in sign language. So I'll just call you something else. That way, make it easier. It was really stupid, and the whole book doesn't have anything exciting or anything interesting. It's just the day-to-day life of this character. What little moments of action that the author tries to excite you is really boring. Like, where James is trying to get back to his home world, and Truck and this other raccoon, which he calls Doc Holliday, try to help him. They're attacked by raccoon bandits wearing leather and like metal claws and wild dogs out in the grass fields. Like, it's very featureless. There's only grass fields. There's a forest at one point, but there's nothing else in the book, and I was really bored. It's like, it'll be basically if you had like a sandbox, you put one interesting thing in it, and then the rest of it is just sand. That's exactly what the Arctic Sleep was. It was just basically one little interesting thing in the center, and the rest is just open sand, nothing else added to it. And I was so bored with the book. I said, fuck it, I'm done with this thing. I am not going to bother waste my time anymore with this book. I was so bored with it. And I would definitely like to find better books where characters are teleported to other worlds. I definitely like to find some better ones than The Arctic of Sleep. A book that will literally put you to sleep, pun unintended. Okay. Oh, wrong one. Alright, next. Next, Hell House by Richard Matheson. I like Richard Matheson. I've been a fan of his since I got into horror when I was at a young age. I first saw Duel, which really piqued my interest in horror, and then I read I Am Legend, which the story is really good. None of the films of it are good at all. And I really like Richard Matheson's stories. Not all of them, but he's an excellent writer. But you're not going to be impressed by every book and story that an author writes, and this is one of them. Hell House, I really didn't like at all. I found it very boring. My main issue with Hell House that it has the common cliche of any story about ghosts that it feels they have to throw in the skeptic character. I do not like this trope at all. It's just, you got one character that's trying to prove the existence of ghosts and trying to, prove that what's actually happening in the story is real, and you got some skeptic who's trying to deny it and just say, oh, we're just seeing things. It's our mind playing tricks. It's just an illusion and some other bullshit. I hate this, and it's like, why has every ghost story got to have the skeptic character? Why? I really hate it. And then I know other books like monster and alien books do have the skeptical characters. That's understandable. But Ghost, it's like a common character that has to be always like forced into the story. I hate that. And the rest of the characters I really felt were boring. The whole plot I really didn't like at all. I thought the idea that this like big mansion out in the kind of like thick forests of New York sounded like a really cool idea, but I was really bored with it. I thought I could see like a much better story if it was like some friends, they're on the way to a house party, or they're leaving a house party or something, and their car breaks down and it's during a storm, so they decide to take shelter in this house, and they're trapped there. The house is haunted, and basically is prevented from leaving unless they can solve the mystery of it, and then it'll let them leave. But the longer they're in the house, the more and crazy they get. That would have been a better idea. Sadly, Richard Matheson didn't write that one. Instead, you got this guy is trying to deny the existence of ghosts with his $70,000 computer. $70,000 computer in the book, and I'm just thankful that I haven't blown through $70 in my lifetime, because I could imagine just spending way better things in my life than blowing $70,000 on a computer to try to deny the existence of ghosts or supernatural stuff. and the rest of the characters are all either interested and are trying to unlock the mysteries of the Hell House. So you got one character who's kind of torn of being there because they nearly died in the being there, and it was just not a really good book. Like, I will say, like, the way, like, the detail in the story was good. Like, the way, like, how Richard Matheson describes the house is really interesting. It's really a creepy looking place. That's the only credit I'll give the book. But the whole entire book was not exciting at all. It was really boring. And I was like, this was another one that I heard is beloved by fans of Richard Matheson, and I was like, I don't like this at all. It's just, I didn't enjoy it. It was not scary. I didn't like it. I didn't like the characters. It's just not a good book at all, in my opinion. Okay. Next, Razorback by Peter Brunner. This one is basically, it's like Jaws, except instead of set in water, this is set in the outbacks of Australia, and instead of a killer shark, you got a wild killer pig. It has again, this is one of those books that has a really cool title and a really cool cover, but the whole book sucks. And it's like the novel Jaws. It's basically, it's like, it's got this killer animal plot, which could, I guess, yeah, it's got this killer animal. That's the main plot of the book, but it's got this subplot about like corruption and people doing like crime and stuff, and it does not mix at all with the story. It really drags on the story, and then you got the characters that are a bunch of characters are really not likable. I especially hated the ex-wife character, who is like this animal activist. She was just really annoying, and I was kind of thankful she's killed in the book. I really disliked this character at all, yet you're supposed to feel sorry for her. I thought that was her own fault. She basically signed her own death for what she was doing. Like, you're just a person that's going to go out of their way to find trouble, to make a name for themselves. You're just asking for trouble to come to you. So I didn't like the characters. The book featured very little of this killer pig, and I'm like, come on, I want to see this thing going through town and just causing havoc and destruction and leaving like a high body count. That's what I want to read, not this stupid subplot about a pet food company that's smuggling diamonds to Hong Kong. I don't want to read that. I want to read The Killer Pig. Oh, it was just not a good book at all, and I was really disappointed with that one. And there's now I heard the film is a lot better, so I will check out the film of Razorback. And yeah, and then I saw the book was recently reprinted with this nice hardcover edition. I thought, I'm glad I read this book beforehand and not waste money on that hardcover, because that would have been some money flushed down the toilet if I bought that pile of shit again, or bought it if I haven't got the paperback. But yeah, it was just basically a really cool, like, a cool idea. Just bunch of but it had a bunch of unlikable characters, a subplot that just really dragged on the story, and yeah, so yeah, that was one of the weakest killer animal books I read of last year. Oh, oh, oops. All right, and the last book, the 10th and final book of the worst books I read of last year, The Offspring by N.J. Williamson. Now, this is a book I didn't do a video review on. This was during the when I was doing October Terror, when I wanted to read some horror books. I pulled this out because it was sitting on my shelf, and I was curious about N.J. Williamson, as I do see his books from time to time. I did have a few, and I discarded them because I didn't get far in them, and this was one of the only ones I had, so I decided to give this book a shot, and I ended up not liking it, and I ended up reading something. I ended up reading Crooked Tree, and I wish I read Crooked Tree first, then N.J. Williamson's book, because then I would have said, screw it, this isn't worth mentioning in the video. But I decided to bring this one up, as the other books I didn't like were just, they were bad, but Offspring was one of the worst books I read. I decided to save the absolute worst for last. So the plot of The Offspring is about some scientists out in Iraq with some other guy, and this other scientist has found some type of I can't remember if it's like a mummy. That's right. He's found a mummy, and somehow this dead body has like great power, and they have to figure out how to unlock it. So the scientist character, the other one, decides to kill the scientist and take the mummy for himself, and then blow up the sites. That way his tracks are covered, so no one can find about it. And then the book flashes forward a few years where the scientist has taken over some house in the neighborhood, and he's done something to these two kids' mother. They can't see their mother, and the father is divorced. And there's like a maid that comes in and helps out, and relatives do visit the two children in the story, but it's so unreal. Like, I know, like, horror stories are not, are supposed to be based on complete reality and stuff and real, but the story was just so far fetched. It was complete bullshit. Like, the scientist is forcing these two kids, a brother and sister, to do his bidding. They have to go get books on stuff. And the librarian is constantly asking questions. Why are your kids checking these books out? You're too young for this stuff. And their same response is, "Oh, we're just getting what our grandfather grandfather or uncle wants us to get." And then the library at one point refuses to hand them out the books. So then the scientist has the librarian dispatch that to get someone else to do the books. And I was like, why don't you get the damn books yourself? Like, why are you making the kids do it? It was really dumb. And then the kids starting to uncover some plot that their uncle or grandfather has some person living in the house and is using the mother for something. And when she is revealed, she does not look well at all, and she accuses the scientist doing stuff to her, and this causes anger towards the kids, and he locks her up. And later on in the book, this is the part where I stopped reading because it was complete bullshit. The kids are explaining to their relatives what is going on, and the one relative literally said this: "You're right. Something strange is going on here. Your grandfather or uncle is up to something. You got to find out what's going on." I'm like, what? Wait. Let me get this straight. You would rather let the kids figure out what is going on than get them the hell out of the house and save them from this evil man living upstairs in their house. Like, that is complete bullshit. And it was so stupid. The plot just got dumber, and I don't like the characters at all. I thought the whole thing was stupid. I'm throwing that book across the room, and I was like, this is a pile of shit. I'll move on to something better, which I'm glad I went to Crooked Tree. I just wish I went Crooked Tree first, then Offspring by N.J. Williamson. So I am still curious about some of his books. Like, I remember my friend Leon for Paperback Maniac. He has a whole bunch, and some of them do sound like, I was looking up some reviews of N.J. Williamson books to see if there are some good ones. There's people that say they're either decent or not good. So I don't know maybe if I see it for a real price, maybe I'll get another one, a few by N.J. Williamson. But it just that book was so dumb. It left a really bad taste in my mouth. And the other thing I thought was odd is that the cover of it's got this mummy in this stone tomb, and I'm thinking, okay, is this like Egyptian horror? No, it's the mummy's from Iraq of all places. And I'm like, I don't think they don't do burials like that. It was a terrible book. No likable characters. The cover is definitely misleading. It is not mentioned in the book at all, and the whole thing was just stupid. Just one of the worst books I read. I kind of wish I did read more of it, so I could have found some other things to take that book apart. But hey, at least I saved it for this video. All right, those are the 10 worst books I read of last year. Now I will move on to the top 10 best books I read of last year. All right, the top 10 best books of last year. Okay, number 1, Chancellor Terror by Sean Hudson, out of the Conundrum, Nick Blake. This was a reread, and this was one of my favorite Sean Hudson books I've ever read. I did like Assassin. Slugs was an interesting book. I'll definitely have to read that on the channel for this year. But Chancellor Terror is one of my favorite books by Sean Hudson. It is one of his most brutal and violent and shocking novels he wrote ever. And despite it, my only complaint with Chancellor Terror, it was really short. Like, you can read it in a single sitting if you don't have anything else better to do, or in 2 days, because it's 177 pages, which is really short. But despite a short length, it was very brutal with violence, gore. It has chainsaw dismemberment, which is something which the the Texas Chainsaw Massacre film was lacking when I first saw that film. I was so bummed when I watched that original film, hearing how people were shocked and sickened by how violent, graphic it is, and I watched it like, where the fuck is the dismemberment? Like, where's the chainsaw dismemberment and gore? Like, where is it? I really felt the title of that film was really misleading. It's called Chainsaw Massacre. Where's the Chainsaw Massacre? There isn't any in this film. Luckily, though, the second and third film do make up for it. But anyway, Chancellor Terror just basically, it has everything that I enjoy out of an 80s slasher film. It's got violence, gore. You got a really cool like serial killer with an awesome weapon, the chainsaw, my favorite power tool, and he does use some other weapons, but mainly the chainsaw is his weapon of choice. And it was a really fun book, and I really wish this book would come back in print. I wish Sean Hudson would seriously bring Chainsaw Terror back in print. It is an excellent book, and no one should have to pay an arm or a leg just to get a copy of this book. It is a really good book, and I wish he would bring Chainsaw Terror back and reboot the Chainsaw series. Like, he originally planned to do 2 sequels to Chainsaw Terror, which is going to be Chainsaw Bloodbath and Chainsaw Slaughter. Those are sick names, and I could just imagine the awesome cover artwork that would have graced those covers of those 2 books. It would have been awesome. It was just a fun book. Like, it had a lot of like awesome kills, a lot of memorable moments, some dark humor, and seeing the character get his demise at the end, the killer, which was really cool too. And it was really fun. And there was characters that I like, characters I despise, and there was characters I felt bad that got sliced up by the killer in Chainsaw Terror. But it was just such a fun book, and it's just, oh man, that's one of my favorite Sean Hudson books, and one of my favorite 80s slasher themed novels too. So that was a really fun one. Okay, next, Dream Park by Larry Niven and Stephen Barnes. This was also a reread because years ago I tried Dream Park, and I think it was because I wasn't understanding how the concept of how Dream Park works. I couldn't wrap my brain around it at the time, and I gave up on the book too soon. And I'm glad I gave the book another chance because it was a really cool and fun book. I love the idea of it. Basically, you got this futuristic amusement park called Dream Park, and basically there's both holograms and actors that are in the park, so it gives it like that really like real experience. And basically, kind of similar to Ready Player One. Basically, people can go there, they can play video games, they can even like star in movies and be like the main character and stuff, and like relive the films and stuff, and like be part of this fantasy world, and you can put all your troubles behind. That's a really cool idea. And then you got this like online gaming tournament, which people from around the world come to enter into, win points they can use as credit, and they have to go through these like challenges in the levels. And both people at Dream Park and around the world are watching this event, and it's unscripted, so anything can happen. It was a really cool book. Now, I didn't like the subplot, which is basically it's about this one guy that gets murdered, and the head of security is trying to figure out who did it. And I felt this plot could have been a lot better executed. I felt it could have been more could have been done to it. Like, I felt like the one person dying wasn't really good enough. I really wish it was more people. Like having a serial killer running amok in this Dream Park would have been interesting, or a corporate assassin trying to sabotage Dream Park, because there is mention that this company does have rival companies that are trying to beat Dream Park, so that would have been interesting too. But that was the only thing I didn't like with Dream Park, but it was still, the whole idea of it was really fun. A lot of likable characters, characters I didn't like. And it was such a fun book to read. I would love to check out the other books in the Dream Park series, because I heard they're really good. But it was that was a really fun book, and the very well written and well crafted story. I really enjoyed that one. All right. Next, Nightfall by Isaac Asimov and Robert Silverberg. This is basically a novel that's expanded. That's an expanded version of the short story by Isaac Asimov of the same name. And this was sometimes with books, if they're really different and from everything else and a little weird, I do like it, as long as it doesn't get too weird, of course. But this was a really interesting idea. Basically, what if you lived on a planet that had no moon, just suns, and then after a certain time, all the suns will line up and they all disappear, and then the planet is covered in darkness for like 24 hours or something like that. I forget if it's like 24 hours or 72 hours in the book. I can't remember, but it was a really interesting idea. And then as the suns are disappearing, people are going crazy because they never experienced Nightfall before, and you got this cult that knows all about it. And when they find out that some university is trying to figure out how to survive it, they try to prevent them from doing it. It was a really good book. There were characters that I liked, characters I didn't like. Some parts in the book I didn't like. I think the one part I really didn't like the most was the tunnel of mystery, where people go on this ride for like 15 minutes, but you're in a tunnel of darkness. Like, that's what kind of ride is that? That's not the ride I want to go on when I'm in an amusement park. I want to go on a roller coaster or something. Not let's go in a tunnel for in total that covers you in total darkness for 15 minutes. If I want to be in total darkness, I can just turn all the lights off in my room. So I didn't like that part. What? Oh yeah, and this cult that's against fire. Like, how are you gonna cook food? Like, all the electronic stuff is destroyed. How are you supposed to cook food? You're gonna what? Grow plants and eat raw meat? Or that part was not really explained. I didn't like it. Nightfall also had moments of had also it's science fiction, but it's also post-apocalyptic, as it shows the city in ruins and stuff, and the university too, which I really liked. And there is some really violent and shocking parts in the book. Like, I remember the one part where this one character is killed by a bunch of children who are doing it for fun, and it was like really shocking because this girl comes up to the guy and she just stabs him, and while laughing, all these other children come out and start stabbing this one character while laughing. It was really, that scene caught me off guard. So yeah, so Nightfall was a really interesting book. I found out there is no sequel to this book. I think someone might have did it as a joke or something, or wished there was a sequel made of it, because I wouldn't mind reading a sequel of Nightfall if it's well written, of course. But there's no sequel to this book. It's just a one-off novel. But I still enjoyed it. Next, Mariel by Koshin Tatami. This was a really good book. I remember hearing about when this book, when it kind of first came out back in 2003, and then the film, of course, when it getting more popularity over here. And my dad said that the film was absolutely terrible, and I watched it. The film was absolutely atrocious. It's like the book is much more darker and serious. The film is like it's like a dark comedy satire. I really hate that when studios don't want to show the darkness in films, they try to lighten the mood by throwing in comedy or satire elements. It really wrecks the story. But Mariel is basically set in an alternate history where Japan won World War II, and the whole country has become like basically it's got both military and police force, and the government has banned a lot of things such as metal and rock music. They only allow it though if you're supporting your country though, and they have this experiment which basically they take 50 students at random and they send them to an island to fight each other to the death. And they do this not only to cause fear and tight control over citizens, but for better survival tactics. And you follow these kids, as these teenagers, as they're trying to survive on this island and stuff. And well, some are trying to figure out how to get off. Others are actually going out killing other students, either to survive or to defend themselves. There are a few that don't want to take part of it and commit suicide, but the rest are basically forced to fight each other. And it was a really good book. It was dark. It was very violent. There were characters I liked, characters I despised, characters I felt bad for. And it was a really good, excellent book. And I highly recommend you check out Mariel, the novel. Do not watch the film at all. It's absolutely terrible. Oh, I was really annoyed the one part where the one girl gets poisoned by accident, and the other girls are now accusing each other, and then they whip out these guns, and they're doing these high-pitched screams as they're shooting at each other, and it was so stupid. And at one point, a character gets hit in the head with an axe, and he literally shambles about for a full minute before he finally collapses. It was so stupid. I thought, this is not supposed to be funny. This is supposed to be serious. It really sucked. So Mariel, the book, is way better, and that was definitely a really good action dystopian thriller book I really enjoyed. Okay. Next up, Crooked Tree by Robert C. Wilson. This was a book I read many years ago when I started collecting vintage paperbacks when I go to Valley Village frequently, and I was lucky enough to find this gem on the shelves. This is a kind of a mixture of a shapeshift horror with native folklore elements added to it, and it's about this fictional town, Crooked Tree, that's having these mysterious killings of people being mauled to death by bears, and there's something odd going on in the town. There's like kind of like cult in it that's behind it, and of course you don't find that out until later on in the book from the main character. And it was just a really fun book to read. It's got such violent descriptions of people being mauled and torn apart by bears, and it was really fun. One of my favorite moments is when this one guy is literally pulled apart by bears in his tent during a thunderstorm, which I really like that part. And this mother is told to go to this house by one of the characters, and when she gets there, the car is literally flipped over by a bear, and she's like literally pulled out of the car by this bear. It was such a really cool scene, and I really enjoyed it. It was such a fun book. It was very well written. I liked the characters. There were characters I despise, and there's one character, in fact, I really hated, and I was glad to see him get what was coming to him in the end of the book. And it was very well written. I really enjoyed Crooked Tree, and the cover too is awesome. Like that, I love old paperbacks. They have the die cuts and stuff inside of them. In the cover of Crooked Tree, it's got this. You see a bear with blood dripping from its muzzle behind a tree, and then when you open it, you see like this like bear woman standing over this person she's killed, and she's got like her arm in the guy's rib cage. Like basically, yeah, she ripped his heart out essentially, but. I had so much fun reading that book. I love 80s horror books. They're so much fun to read, if they're written right, of course. Oh, oops, did it again. Okay, next, Live Girls by Ray Garton. This was the decent vampire book I read of last year. Yeah, so after The Stake absolutely failed to it like failed on all levels to excite or interest me at all. In fact, it had hardly a vampire in the book at all, even towards the end, but that doesn't count. Live Girls was at least a decent read. Like, it had some really good moments. I felt there were parts that could have been better, but it was still a good book. It's basically about a guy that basically is like kind of out of place character. Like, he's working for a magazine that writes like it's like kind of like a right-wing type magazine that they do stories on violence, sex, and a bunch of other stuff. And this character doesn't really belong there. That's the one thing I was kind of baffled with. If he doesn't like this sort of thing, why is he here? Why is he like? He's the editor, and like, why is he here if he doesn't like this sort of thing? He's kind of like a pushover in the beginning of the book, and then he goes to one of these like peep shows, and this woman begins draining him of blood until he eventually, he begins to look worse. There's one female colleague is concerned about him, and then later on he meets this guy who's trying to, who was it? His brother disappeared at this peep show, so he's been following him, and then he's trying to get him to help him figure out what's going on with this peep show called Live Girls, and eventually the guy turns into a vampire, and he becomes a vampire, and now he has to feed off blood. So the porter guy is like now trying to like help him get back to human, but he can't. So he's just trying to prevent him from killing one. But the main character ends up killing two people he really despises in the book, which was really fun to read the way their deaths are. But it was a decent book. It definitely it does take some things with the vampire lore and changes up a bit. Like I like how in this one crosses don't do anything. Like, come on, like if someone were to hold up a cross against a vampire or do this, like that's gonna do jack shit. Like, come on, like I find it really hard to believe that a wooden cross or any cross at all can keep a vampire or some supernatural entity away from you. Like I find it stupid. It's like, how is this object supposed to have power? That would be like, get back, I have this can of Coca-Cola, it will protect me, it's powerful. It's the same thing. So yeah, that doesn't work. Bibles don't work, which is another plus. Holy water is completely useless against vampires, which is another bonus too. So there's even a fun. It even had a funny part where the reporter guy is trying the different stuff on the main character to see if it harms him, and he says no, it doesn't have any effect on me, and then the character goes, oh fuck you, Brian Stoker. That part made me laugh. It was so funny. Um, Vampires do have to avoid sunlight. That's the only thing think is fair. They have to avoid sunlight. Oh, yeah, and apparently there's certain blood types that can only drink if someone's like a junkie or something that has like infected blood that can create that can make them sick and ill, which is I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't That's something you don't see in vampire stories hardly at all. Like vampires just bite into anyone and they just get the blood from them, and it got me thinking, like, what if the person had a disease? Won't that affect the vampire as well? Like that's kind of an interesting idea, and apparently there's a certain limit that the amount of blood vampires can drink. If they go past their limit, they'll become feral and turn to like these like hideous bat creatures, which is shown in the book too, towards the end of the book. And that was a really cool scene too, with these like feral like bat people. It was really cool. It was a decent rate. It had the ending I felt was a little too rushed. Like the offer was like Ray Garland was trying to wrap everything up, and he was going a little too fast towards the end. But it was still a good book, and I really enjoyed it. I would like to check out the sequel to Live Girls, and hopefully it'll be good, and also have some good vampire novels for this year and werewolf stuff too. All right. Next, Manhattan Transfer by Johnny Sif. Again, this is another kind of decent book, and this one's also a reread. I read this book many years ago. I mentioned in the video that I got this book while doing community service at a book riot, and I did such a good job. The person running the book riot let me take one book for free, and I saw this book when I was putting books on the table, and the cover really catches my eye, which is one thing I wish more publishers were doing today. Like, there are some good covers here and there, but most of the covers I see now in books are really just really basic, plain, and just like very lazily put together. Like, if you have a really cool, sharp cover, you're gonna draw someone's attention. They're gonna pick up that book and want to read it. That's what I wish more publishers were doing. And because of that, that's how I discovered Manhattan Transfer. Just this really cool cover of like Manhattan literally being pulled out of the ground by a ship as it's being pulled into outer space, and all the water's dripping off, boats are falling off, and any part of the like even buildings too are falling off as well. They're not in this like circle that the city's being pulled up. It was a really cool. It was a really cool book. It had a really interesting idea. It did have some characters I liked and characters I dislike. My one problem with Manhattan Transfer is that towards the book, it's got this whole subplot of this religious nutcase who thinks this is an act of God and thinks that they're being taken to heaven, and these people are trying to get back to Earth are going to doom them, so they have to try to stop them. And some of the things they are doing, I was like shaking my head and just be like, you want to make the situation worse? Like they're setting bombs off. They want to raid the government, the mayor's office and stuff. Luckily that didn't happen, but they're just causing like absolute havoc, and they're making the situation worse than it already is. Like, they could potentially kill everyone on this ship if they absolutely went too far in it. But I really didn't like this subplot. And then this was one thing I forgot to mention during my review on Manhattan Transfer. You find out the reason why the city was pulled. Like, this is something I forgot when I first read it. When I read it, I really liked the book. But when I read it the second time and explained why the city was pulled, apparently these aliens believe that the human race and all these other races that they take in from other planets are dangerous to galaxies. So they're going to take one city from that planet and put on the ship and then destroy the whole planet so it can't harm the galaxy. I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. I was really baffled by this, and I think the offer could have had a way better ending, in my opinion. A better explanation, I mean, of why the aliens were doing this. To me, I didn't like that at all. And one idea I really wish that the offer expanded upon was having the other alien races helping out the humans. That would have been interesting to see. And then, in my personal opinion, a better subplot would have had like one alien race. They're like feral animals, and basically they have broken out of their dome, and they are like killing any other animals, not animals, any other beings that they can find to feast on, and they just so happen to get into the Earth's dome, which that would have been way better. It did get a little slow and dull. There were some moments where I felt the action could have been a lot better. The ending, though, I will say, was well executed. How the characters figure out how they got to defeat the aliens controlling this like kind of like drone ship. They figure out how to destroy this thing, and they come up with a really neat idea. I thought it's interesting to see characters think outside the box. Instead of like a cliche way of like, oh, let's just shoot a missile at the ship or fire a laser beam and blow it up, like something very cliche like this. In this book, the characters have to think outside the box how to defeat these aliens. It's still worth a read. Same with it's still worth a read. It's just it could have been a lot better. That's all, but it was still a decent read. All right. Next, The Wolfen by Y.B. Stryber. This was also a reread, and I really enjoyed the Wolfen a lot. One of those instances I feel that the book is way better than the movie. Like the movie is decent, but they changed so much around with the plot of the book that I felt that the novel was better. And again, the book is a lot darker. It has the plot is actually a lot more darker than the film. The film they kind of lighten it down a little bit, which I really don't like when films do that. Even when the book has a dark plot, they'll try to find. Sometimes studios will try to find ways to tone it down a bit, and I really don't like that. But basically, this is about these wolfen creatures, and I made a mistake. It's not shapeshifter horror. It's not werewolf horror, even though some people do consider the wolfen. They do categorize it as werewolves, but they're not. They're just basically these much larger, more intelligent wolves called wolfen. Um, they're basically these wolves have been on Earth for a very long time, and basically they were driven near extinction from humans, and so basically they live in the decaying area of New York, and basically they kill like homeless people, junkies, and stuff. And I found it kind of weird because they're supposed to kill people that won't be missed, but this pack of wolfen, they kill two officers at a pound what what is it called, pound yard, where basically vehicles are impounded. Yeah, vehicles are impounded and stuff, and the person doesn't collect them. They just scrap them and sell them. I thought that was a little strange. I thought they're supposed to kill people that are not missed, but I think there's some. Oh, that's right. Yeah, basically explained in the book that that there's some of the younger members of the Wolfen are very reckless. They don't care who the person is. They'll just kill them on sight just to feed off them. Which I do remember the leader killing one of his own because they were going against the rules and stuff, and they didn't stop, and they were put down. But you got the two characters that don't quite get along at time, but they do agree that this event is strange, and they want to get to the bottom of it, of these wolfen and stuff, and basically expose of them or stop them at least. It was a really good book. It did have a lot of memorable moments. I wish it did have some more kills and stuff. I was thinking he could have had like the YB Strider could have had a scene where like someone is being chased by the wolfen and runs into the subway. That would have been really cool. I just felt like it could have had more, and I really felt this book could have had a sequel. Like the ending ends off of a cliffhanger. Like the Wolfen are decided they're going to go to war with the humans so they can claim their land because they had it. They're being pushed to near extinction. They have no place to live because it's all their forest has been just demolished for the humans to live in, and they reached their breaking point. So I would have loved to see a sequel to that, but sadly, Robbie Stryber didn't make a sequel to Wolfen, though. But at least the book's still good to read. All right, next, The Sentinel by Gerald Pevich. This was kind of hard to pick some really good books because I went through all the bad ones. And I had very few good ones, but this was the decent thriller out of the other thrillers I read. Like I didn't decide not to mention Crackdown or Retribution, which was not a good thriller. So I had to at least get one good thriller on this list. So I went with The Sentinel because it was the only decent one I liked, and was also a reread because I read this book years ago. basically the plot's about a Secret Service agent is framed for attempting to assassinate the president, and basically he goes on the run. And he's trying to prove his innocence while trying to stop the real assassins from carrying out this act. And it has a lot of double crossing, backstabbing, and there's a bunch of characters who you think are actually the good guys, when in fact they're not. So that was a real good book, and a lot of good action set pieces, interesting scenery, funny, really good dialogue, and well-crafted characters. And it was a really good book, and I enjoyed it. I would love to check out Jannard's other books, especially To Live and Die in LA, one of my favorite crime films of the 80s, and a bunch of other books he wrote too, so really interesting. This was sadly his last book, so I don't know what he's doing now. He hasn't written anything after that. That was his last book, The Sentinel, and it was made into a film, but again, with the film, they changed things around. They toned down the darkness, and they actually made one of the characters who you think is a good guy turns out to be a bad guy. In the film, they make the one character a good guy. I really hated that. It was just, it sucked. And this was not in the book. The entire book takes place in the United States, but in the film, they decided to have one part of it set in Canada for the final climax. I thought, that's stupid. But the last part in Canada, really? It was really dumb. Oh, yeah. And apparently, this was also changed from in the book to the film. But it turns out these Russian terrorists are going to kill the president, and so the Russians disguise themselves as RCMP officers, wearing their red uniforms, and try to kill the president. It was so stupid. I thought, I'll stick with the book. Way better. All right. And the last book, the last good book I read of last year was The Book of the Dead, edited by John Skipp and Craig Spector. There we go. This was a decent read for a collection of short stories. It was kind of a mixed bag. There was some good stories, some better than others, and then there was just a lot of other stories I really didn't like, but at least it had some decent stories I did enjoy. And yeah, like my personal favorites of the story were Jerry's Kids Meet Worm Boy. I really like that story idea. I can't believe that hasn't been made to a film. I really like the character of Worm Boy. That was written by David J. Scroll. He wrote that one. I really like that. And some of the other stories, like Wet Work by Philip Nutman, Mess Hall by Richard Lehman. What else? Oh, man, I don't remember all this story. Something about the town where the waitress is in love with the sheriff and wants to run away with him as the zombie outbreak is getting worse. That was a good one too. The collection did have some really good stories. Some stories were decent, and the rest I really didn't like. But it was still a decent read. And I am. Oh yeah, and also the Beyond that one by Joran Lansdale, the Cadillac Desert or something. I can't remember, but that was a good one too. That was a decent read. So yeah. All right, those are the top 10 worst and best books I read of last year. So I will definitely do another video of this in 2024. So I would definitely be reading a lot of books this year, so that way I have a lot to choose from. And since I am going to be reading manga, graphic novels, and some other stuff, I'll definitely add that to the list too. So I'll have some more variety to the next video for the future. So it'll be definitely worth waiting for. All right. If you like this video, please like it, share it, and don't forget to subscribe to October Library, the YouTube channel, and the Facebook group of the same name, a place to post and review fiction. Until then, I'll catch you later.